Hello everyone, it's Magenta Fantasies bringing you my second devlog. I'll be honest, I'm probably not what most people picture when they think of a game developer. I don't even have a background, degree, or career relating to technology. Granted, I have a degree in graphic design, but my focus was not in the technological or programming aspects of it. I'm a lifelong gamer, but I never thought creating my own video game was something within my reach. So, how did I end up developing a full-fledged video game? Like countless other creative projects, Outcasts of the Rift was conceived in the spring of 2020, at the peak of the COVID-19 pandemic. Unlike many of those projects, it was not because I was stuck at home and had extra time on my hands. Since I worked for an essential business, as a graphic designer for a company in the healthcare industry, I luckily kept my job as it was and kept working through the whole pandemic with relatively few changes to my life. Meanwhile, an idea brewed inside me. One morning, I woke up with a combination of ideas in my head for a narrative with a branching storyline. If somebody had told me that morning that this idea would have led to me developing a video game, I would have given them a bewildered look and said, "What? That's way too far outside of my talents. I'm an authoress and illustrator." While I am a novelist, and have written a few novels that I have yet to put real effort into publishing, I had never written a non-linear story where the reader could direct the story down multiple paths. Growing up, I enjoyed choose-your-own-adventure novels, so I began researching those. I looked into programs for writing and organizing these, and eventually my research led me to Visual Novel Maker. I also chose this program because Vulcanfox, an artist I like, used it to create his own game, The Pirate's Fate. I highly recommend it to fans of visual novels and transformations, or people who enjoy games with philosophical undertones. Don't be put off by the warning on the game's Steam page. It's T-rated at worst. Visual Novel Maker allows users to create visual novels without programming knowledge and markets itself as aimed towards aspiring artists and writers to bring their stories to life. I was immediately intrigued and downloaded it on sale from Steam. My journey into game design had begun. Over the next few months, I experimented in Visual Novel Maker and created a couple small games. I kept hitting my head against the constraints of the program, and when I looked into solutions, they were too convoluted for me to implement. However, I received some very useful answers to my questions, and many of them said things like, "You can create a combat system by doing this, and that, but it won't be that deep, and you'd be better off using RPG Maker." You'd be better off using RPG Maker. I heard that answer several times. That was the push I needed to change programs. At the time, I had never heard of RPG Maker. I was hesitant at first, as a skydiver waiting in an airplane looking down at the landscape speeding by thousands of feet below. Ultimately, that was the push that would knock me out of the airplane and send me skydiving. Those few months using Visual Novel Maker weren't a waste. What I learned in Visual Novel Maker made learning RPG Maker much easier, as common events, conditions, and other features work in a fairly similar way, and the UI has some similarities. I downloaded a free trial for RPG Maker MZ, which had just released, and began experimenting. The timing was perfect. It was a sign that developing my game in RPG Maker was meant to be. I was immediately enchanted by RPG Maker MZ. Not only was the in-game tutorial fantastic, but I found hundreds of tutorial videos on YouTube for people learning to use RPG Maker. Soon I discovered the wonderful online community surrounding the program, and the wealth of resources and information within the official forum. After the 20-day trial expired, I bought RPG Maker MZ. As I learned more and more about programming and game development, I created a few small games to learn the program and improve my skills. While these were incredibly useful for learning game development and testing game mechanics, none of these were projects I would publicly release or revisit for anything other than testing purposes. However, I had two ideas that particularly inspired Outcasts of the Rift. The first was an adventure game or narrative game with branching storylines where the cast is literally and figuratively transformed in different ways depending on the player's choices. I've always been fascinated by transformations and transforming characters, and I wanted to create a narrative themed around them. This idea had some problems. I had ideas for the storyline, but no real context to shape them around.
Other than having morph magic as a means of transformation and some loose character concepts, there is no defined setting or lore. The second came about when I found out about a plugin called SRPG Core that allows players to create Fire Emblem-esque tactical battles in RPG Maker. What I didn't know was this is not a plugin for beginners. It has a very complex learning curve. I spent 8 hours one Saturday when I started learning to implement it. Once I was more experienced with SRPG Core, I considered creating a Fire Emblem fan game. I had several ideas for certain game mechanics I thought would be interesting in a Fire Emblem game, and wanted a sandbox to experiment inside of. Some of these ideas included wider attack ranges, maps where the terrain changes as battles progress, larger movement ranges, status effects being a more prominent aspect of gameplay, more weapon types, a projectile weapon triangle, and an artillery weapon triangle. Eventually I had many ideas that didn't mesh well with Fire Emblem. Plenty of these came from Pokemon, and others came from many various sources of inspiration. While I have been a Fire Emblem fan since 2009, and it's one of my all-time favorite video game series, I began to realize I should break away and create my own game. Thus, Outcasts of the Rift was born. I'm a lifelong Pokemon fan, and have been enchanted with the open-world environments, surprising amount of depth, secrets to discover, skill-based combat system, and tons of creatures to find and recruit since Pokemon Red. I still fondly remember the Pokemon craze from the mid to late 1990s, and wanted to capture some of that magic in my own game. Outcasts of the Rift also counts Redwall among its main influences. I'm a lifelong Redwall fan, and I've always dreamed about playing an RPG with a Redwall-esque setting. While swords and sorcery settings are commonplace in RPGs, populating the world with a society of anthropomorphic animals adds a distinctive touch and the potential for some unique lore. I brought all three sources of inspiration together, amongst many others. Around this time I came up with the name Outcasts of the Rift. In 2021, I became more and more passionate about Outcasts of the Rift, as it conceptually became what it is today. As I continued writing the script, programming, and creating assets, themes emerged in the game such as fight for what you have and fight for what you lack, loss of innocence and coping with this, change on a personal and broader level, peace, choices, consequences, loyalty, power, bonds, family, and embracing multiple diverse perspectives. With all the change and chaos in the world that has occurred since 2020, I liked the idea of a game about making peace and coexisting, or at least having the option to pursue that path. Players can still choose to wage war if they believe that is the right course of action, or if they want to explore those story paths. Writing the script for Outcasts of the Rift helped me rediscover my love for writing script-style prose. In the past, I wrote several stories, both fanfiction and original fiction, that way. I broke away from it to write traditional novels because that is what is marketable. Writing dialogue tags, phrases such as "he said" used to indicate who is speaking, is one of my least favorite parts of writing, along with describing how characters move from place to place. With scripts, I love being free from most of the semantics of prose and writing the meatier, more important parts like dialogue, plot, action, and characterization with minimal prose except when needed to amplify the narrative. While I was always an artist, I learned to apply my illustration skills in many new ways to create game assets such as sprites, portraits, tile sets, and animations. I had to learn some new skills to create these. Overall, working on Outcasts of the Rift has helped me grow as an artist more than almost anything else I've ever done. In fact, Creating Outcasts of the Rift has been one of the best, most rewarding experiences of my life, and I'm so happy to share my creation process with all of you. If you would like to learn more about Outcasts of the Rift, including when the Kickstarter campaign will launch, please follow the Kickstarter page. If you'd like to join my newsletter and receive exclusive information about Outcasts of the Rift, please sign up for the email list on the Outcasts of the Rift website and also wishlist the game on Steam. You can find these links and more in the description. I have more information about the game in general there.
To be notified about future devlogs, which I intend to release on a more regular basis, please subscribe. I'd also appreciate if you could hit the like button and help the YouTube algorithm share this video with other potential Outcasts of the Rift fans. You can also follow me on my Instagram and my Tumblr, where I post the bulk of my Outcasts of the Rift related content. Thank you for watching!